Dude talks from my bedroom floor. Welcome back. It's been a moment. It's been a moment, but today we're covering First Samuel and we're covering the end. So I'm covering my Bible's over there, 29 through 31. So basically, here's what's happened. So David and his men are out on the lam because Saul's going crazy. And so he's working with the Philistines and he's fighting with the king. He's saying, I'm going to fight for you because my own king is trying to kill me. And so he's been doing a great job. They've been winning, they've been victorious. Why? Because God. All of a sudden, he's going to go fight the Israelites with the Philistines. And some of the Philistine leaders are like, nah, bro, he's going to betray us. He's the one, he's going to turn on us. He's been working with us, and this is going to be the perfect chance. Which actually, I don't blame him. Despite he's been loyal to him, but also it's understandable in this day and age. It's all about your culture, your people are always your people. It's like it's a big deal. Um, it is a big deal nowadays, but especially during this time, like your heritage and your culture is huge, and so the fact that like the they're basically worried. But the leader is like the king is like, hey bro, some other leaders they don't like you. I gotta go with what they say, because they my homies. But I'm gonna let you go as long as you ain't doing nothing to us. Um, just leave by morning. I don't want nothing bad to happen to you. Go off and do your own thing. And so he's like, okay. And so him and his men go back to basically where all their wives and their children are, and they find out that the city's been destroyed. And so everyone is freaking out. All the men are like, their wives are gone, their children are gone. I mean, I can't even imagine the intensity of emotion, like just how, like what goes on in your mind to know that your own children and the city and your wives and everything is gone and been kidnapped or pillaged and everything is taken, and all you see is flames and ruins. I mean, just horrifying. But you see this call of David because I think in these chapters you really see where that David is really a godly man. You see these examples of, I guess to me, especially in trying to see like what does it really mean to be a godly man? What does it mean to be a man in general? But especially a godly Christian man. And seeing this example of, for one, he was loyal to the other king. He didn't, he's loyal and he did what he said he was gonna do, and he listened. And even though he could have fought and said, no, I'm gonna beat up these kings, I'm gonna get revenge, the same way that Saul has been trying to basically do it, he goes, no, I'm going to listen. And he listens and he does what he's asked. And then when this happens, he has the opportunity to fall apart. And everybody else, that all the men are starving, they're all dying. They don't even have it says they don't have the energy to weep or something because they've been so exhausted. Um, like they're just falling apart. Maybe that was the slave man. And there is a slave man. So that's the next part. But the first thing that he does is he goes, we need to pray to God. We need to sacrifice to God. That we need God on our side because that's who's going to lead us through. That's who's been leading us through, and that's who's going to continue. And that's like to see that that's such a good reminder of like the first one we should go to is God. Like especially like in this past week, my mind's been all over the place, and I feel like that's not where I've been going to. That's not the first place I'm going to. I feel like I've just been trying to go to and come up with my own ideas, but I'm like, I should probably be coming to God first instead of just trying to do everything on my own. But that's my own situation. Um, just because I've been stressed and having an existential early 20s crisis, but that's beyond the point. Um, and then he meets a slave, and so instead of getting crazy and angry at this guy who's like clearly not his own people, clearly they could just torture him and force him to do something bad. But what does he do? He feeds him, he gives him water because the guy's been dying, and he goes, "Look, bro, what happened? Where are you from? What is going on here?" And he goes, "Hey, we're the Philistines are there, and I'll show you where they're going. Take you to them as long as you save me." And David's like, "Okay." And that's just like, it's such an example of like compassion of like, even though I'm sure he's furious, his own wives are gone, which is a whole other thing. But his own wives are gone and they've been kidnapped. And like, I can imagine you'd probably not be in a positive mood to be helpful to anybody when that happens, you know. I know I wouldn't. But David goes, no, the most important thing is God is saying, we got to hear this guy out. This guy can be, God put him here for a reason. Like, there's a reason this guy's here. God put him there. Let's listen. Let's focus on it. And that's just really cool. And so they have this whole thing about this battle. Basically, David goes into battle again, right? And he's like, I'm gonna take these guys out, and he does. I mean, this is a warrior. This is an example of like, when you gotta step up, you gotta step up, which I don't always do. That's not a skill of mine. Definitely, I tend to be like, do I want to? But that's an example of what a godly man is someone who steps up and is a warrior, you know, a fighter who's willing to sacrifice, willing to fight. But also, it goes into the next part when he's talked to his men, and the men want to say, okay, all the plundering and all the stuff, like, they can have their wives and children back, but we want all the gold and stuff, and we want all the extra stuff because we're the ones who fought and we're the ones who killed, because there were men who were sticking with all the supply. I mean, you have thousands, like, a lot of men. I don't know if it was thousands or hundreds or how many men. But they're like, whoa, like, we should have it because we're the ones who fought. But David is like, no, that's not how this is going to go. I get that you fought, but these guys back here were protecting our supplies. If something had happened, these guys were here doing that. Also, someone had to watch over it. Like, not everybody can be on the front line. And that's such an important thing, I think, to remember, is like, it's so easy, I think, to get consumed with, I want to be, with being the front. Like, it's so, I've been praying a lot for humility, and I think that that's a huge part of it, is like, it's so easy to want to be the center, to be the most important, and to be the one who goes out, the one who fight, the one who gets all this, who you go into the fray and then you get it all. And it's easy to forget all the other people who are part of it. You know what I mean? The people who are doing the things that you don't see. You know, you think of, like, I mean, it's easy to look at life and go, it was all me. But it's all God. God gave you life. That Jesus died on that cross so that we could have a second chance. So it's not us. Us not making bad choices is all thanks to God. God is the one who has allowed us to have good things and to do good things. Like, we're not better, right? Like, it's all God. Even think about, like, the reason why you have, if someone has a good job, for example, like, you can't be a manager without having employees under you, right? Like, or having somebody have taught you, having your parents have taught you, having had work experience beneath you, having had interactions with different individuals. Every human being who you've ever spoken to is a part of your story, regardless if you like it or acknowledge it or not. And God has put those people in your life so that you can become something. Whatever God's intention is for you. You know, and I think it's so easy to get caught up, I think, in that idea of like independence and I'm doing everything. And it's like, nah, you ain't doing everything. God's been doing it. And there's people who stayed in the background. I mean, you think of the past it's crazy to think about nowadays, but it's like for the past hundreds of years, think about how many names are just forgotten to history. Think of how many people in your family line. I mean, we know some people in our family line, but I can only tell you to a certain point, right? I can only tell you a few generations back, and then I don't know the names of all of them. They're gone. They're gone to history. But their faith, their lives, their DNA, their history, and their impact on the community and our nation or the people in their lives are just the continuation of a legacy of a bloodline is what's continued. And it's so important to remember that of like even though they may not have their name up in lights, God has used them. And those people are continuing, their legacy continues into our legacy now. And I don't know, that's just such a cool. I guess what I'm saying is like, it's so important to remember that just because some people have to stay back or don't necessarily go to these great high places doesn't mean that they don't haven't done hard work or that they're not as worthy. I think about it with like you think about evangel. We actually who is it? Paul, I think Paul talks about it. I don't know if it's an Acts or where it is, but he talks about the fact that like they have to find somebody to stay and lead that. I think think about it with Timothy. He calls Timothy to help out with the church and so that he can keep preaching around, and he goes, Timothy, I want you to stay there. And then he does that with a whole bunch of other places, with different people, but says, like, I gotta be the guy. We're all called to evangelize, right? Just share the gospel. Some people are called to do big things and go all over the place and be these names, these people who are called all over the place. But then somebody's gotta be the community at home. Somebody's gotta be the ones who are staying home doing the work, who are continuing to minister, continuing to build those bonds, continuing to disciple, continuing to grow. And that's just as important. I mean, keeping the foundation. Because just because you build something doesn't, if you build something and then just let it go, I mean, you look all over the world and you see what happens when you build something and then people abandon it. It falls apart, crumbles. Or there's nothing left and it becomes overgrowth and it starts becoming like the earth, and that's the crazy part is like, and so I don't know. I just thought that was really neat. And then we have a cool climax. Now I've really, the past couple times that I've been, all the different books of the Bible I've been reading this time, I think because I've been praying a lot more and I think God is like, bruh, that's what you needed. Like you need the Spirit to be here when you're reading the Word because otherwise you ain't gonna get nothing out of it. And so I feel like it's been really moving, but this is a cool plot point. This is just a cool thing of where God creates stories. It's really cool when God creates little intricate stories. The first thing is he talks about there's this whole thing with a ghost and Samuel. That's a whole other talk about how we approve that bringing somebody back which is crazy. The medium brings back Samuel, and Samuel's like, bro, why'd you bring me back? God is the one who you should be going to, not some dead guy. And you gonna die, and your sons are gonna die, and that's how it's gonna go. And then what happens is, and he says, you're gonna fall on your sword, and then Saul tries to get somebody else to kill him, and the other guy says no, so Saul ends up doing it. So exactly what God told Samuel to tell him to Saul is exactly what happened. And then we have this kind of cool cliffhanger little moment of now it looks like the Philistines have won. They've taken the land. They've taken down parts of Israel. And all of a sudden, now the king is dead. And so this is a cool I think it's just such a cool little like history point of where God is going to start moving. because I read this book before. I have read the Bible before, but this is a really cool moment. Is I don't like where basically it's like all hope is lost. The king is dead, and then it ends with this happening, and then the people of Israel in mourning and fasting. So it ends with all of a sudden this darkness is over, and now the everyone's hope is turned to God, and then that's it. And that's just like it's such a movie moment of like, okay, God, what next? And then curtain close. You know what I mean? I think that's just super. It's super cool. Um, but yeah, I thought that was just really neat. And then I think also the importance of fasting. I feel like fasting is one of those things I haven't done a lot of. I think because I'm just hungry a lot, and which means that I probably should fast. Like doing the actual, like a real prayerful faith-based fast. I feel like a lot of times when I fasted in the past, I I start off praying and focusing on God, and then I just start focusing on my hunger, and then I get try to distract myself or take a nap, and that's not. I don't think that's the point. So I can work on that. That's something I can work on. That's part of acknowledging. I've been reading a lot about acknowledging your weaknesses and hearing that a lot in scripture and random stories, and I think that that's one of them. Is my prayer life and my fasting, and spiritually I'm kind of weak. I'm immature, and so we got a lot of work to do. But also, this was another thing. I gotta say this just because I gotta. There was a talk something I saw, and they said that the reason why God talks in whispers is the same reason why someone right next to you talks in whispers. It's because if someone yells at you right next to your face, you're gonna get who yells at you when they're right next to you. And I was like, wow. Like, God talks in whispers because he's right here. He doesn't need to yell because he's right here. Like, that's just. I don't know if that's gonna sink in, but it's sinking into me because that's such a cool image and such a great reminder. I just dig it. I don't know. God gives people some insight sometimes, and I'm like, that's amazing. And then we get to talk about it. It's crazy, y'all. It's crazy. Anyways, have a good night.